Greetings and welcome to the Mount Rushmore podcast. My name is Jeff, and I'm joined, as always, by my good buddies Richard.
Hello.
And Michael.
Howdy.
Richard and Michael, they deliberate the most ubiquitous aspects of a diverse array of topics, and this week's topic is Richard's. It's the Mount Rushmore of going out on top. Why, sir?
Well, there was a specific person or persons that I was thinking of.
Okay.
About how, wow, they really went out like at the top of their game.
Yeah. I think it's so rare.
Yeah, and it got me thinking about how rare it is,
mm-hmm.
and the few people have been able to pull it off successfully. So I thought it'd be a good topic for us.
Oh, yeah. Well, right on. So, Michael, do you have a point of view about this, or we'll just hear it during the chat?
Well, I think that this is such an incredibly nuanced topic, because I think that going out on top can mean so many different things, whether it's someone making a choice, whether someone dying, whether someone went out not by their own, whatever going out means, whether it's an ending of a career, whether it's an ending of a life, whether it is a whatever it is. I think it's pretty fascinating as just it's so broad that I'm excited to talk about it.
That is an interesting aspect, is because through the lens of this topic, I think of career. Maybe because our lives are somewhat kind of insular, and it's hard to do apples to oranges of what a life, successful life is. But yeah, it's funny because death is the big finality that kind of equalizes us all. But to evaluate whether somebody, well, and it doesn't even mean they have to die. But
no,
yeah.
Well, I think that's the thing too, is that would be such the rarest of cases of when you have literally peaked, and then your life has been taken from you. And imagine that and I don't have a choice like this, but imagine if that you were 87 years old and peaked, and then you died, and then it's just like, oh my goodness, like everything just kind of climaxes all at once. You know?
Yeah.
Your life, your career, your whatever.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's get into the topic. So Richard chose it. Michael starts. What's your first choice?
Well, my first choice really led me on from last week, and pardon me if I'm going to double down a little bit, but I'm going to talk about still Bill Watterson.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where this is a guy, last week we talked about the funny pages, and I think the thing that I didn't really realize was how young he was when he quit drawing and writing and creating Calvin and Hobbes. He was 38 years old, and he just is like, I'm retired. I've been doing this for 10 years, which is nothing. I've been at my horrible job for, will be 16 years. And that seems like, oh my God, I can't believe that. But, he basically from 1985 to 1995, Calvin and Hobbes was such a huge hit from the get-go. It started out in 300 papers. And then by the end of it, he was in 2,400 papers. It was like in every paper that could be. It seems like Calvin and Hobbes ran there because that was just what you needed to have. You needed to have the most popular, comic strip of the age. And, his decision to end it all, to end doing the comic, he didn't kill himself. Oh my God. His decision to end it all was like, I've done everything that I really need to do with these comics. I don't have the creative real impulse to continue on. I read some interviews with him later where he talked about the feeling of not wanting to be like the hanger on of someone that continued 5, 10, 20 years on, and be that person that you kind of regret had continued something. It seems weird to think of, but I guess that's what a peak is in someone's artistic life, or their life is in sports, or their life in whatever, is that choosing the right time to end is so important for your legacy. And reading the interviews with him, he doesn't seem like a very braggadocious type person. He doesn't seem like someone that is ended it because he wanted to preserve a legacy. He just ended it because artistically, he was just done. And it's interesting because he hasn't gone on to do a whole lot of things artistically otherwise. He kind of retired and started doing landscape painting, or he'd do the occasional piece of artwork for like a charity, or in 2014 he did some kind of fun, because it was fun to do, kind of fill-in work for this comic called Pearls Before Swine, where he kind of just did a couple of panels for this guy as a favor because it was fun to do. And that's been it. And like, what a life to just have put a pinpoint on it and say, this is what I can be known for and will be known for the rest of my life. And I don't have the need to do this anymore. It's wild. And 38.
Yeah, there's something about the comics that seems to drive the creators of these wildly successful strips, some of them at least, to an early retirement. Bill Watterson, Gary Larson, Berkeley Breathed from Bloom County retired. Now he's back doing stuff online. But there seems to be something about maybe it was the cartoonists of that generation, and I don't know the politics of syndicated comic strips and how much pressure there is to put stuff out, but something was going on there. The kind of star artists of the 80s all kind of decided to leave cartooning at right around the same time.
Unlike
It was
Larson,
like-
and I
Go
don't know how much Berkeley Breathed merged out his strip, but I could see how there's a symbiotic relationship if you have successful merch, you licensing contracts with big companies. You got to keep that strip going to kind of counter that, to kind of keep feel. I mean, all the peanuts has gone on forever after the strip ended, but I would think like a sitcom, you aren't making creative decisions. You're extending another season because of financial decisions, because the sponsors and the network want you to. So yeah, maybe that Watterson refused to license
Sure, yeah.
officially license Calvin out to those other to merchandise was one of the reasons he was able to step away, because otherwise it's probably, if they would keep making him an offer he can't refuse to keep that merch train running.
Yeah, and I think that there's a thing too about maybe it's like Richard kind of alluded to, like, you're drawing a daily strip, you're working on something, you're putting something out every day. And last week we talked about this, how he went on a couple of sabbaticals over the course of his time. But, for the most part, you're putting out something new every single day except Saturday. But still, you're there, you're having to come up with a new idea, you're having to flesh out your storylines. You think about someone that's like a comic book artist. These men and women will draw a comic and they'll spend time on a comic for a year, a couple of issues, a few years in a row, then probably take some time off and come back. And it doesn't seem like that big a deal. But I think when you're in someone's daily newspaper, there is a relationship you have. And I'm sure that at some point, when you are so attuned to just the artistic nature of it, you just get probably burnt out a little bit and be like, I've done it all. I don't know. There's, and it's just wild. And like, there was no bigger comic than Calvin and Hobbes when it ended. And I thought, well, this is what we're talking about.
Bill Keane started Family Circus in 1960, and now it's drawn by his son, Jeff Keane.
Yeah.
Which is weird because Jeff is a character.
Yeah.
In the thing, so he's actually drawing himself whenever he says something cute and stupid. But go on.
Yeah. Well, also, like, let's see, Thel died on May 2008 from Alzheimer's. I had thought that he was actually divorced sometime earlier. Well, regardless of that, I imagine Bill, who knows if Bill Watterson had this sworn kind of promise to this kid, Calvin, that he created, that he was not going to make him do stuff that was stupid just to generate another strip, just to milk another month a year out of that strip. Like, I'm not going to let Calvin do dumb things. I'm not going to make up dumb things for him to do. It's all going to be about what he needs to do. Bill Keane did not make that promise, because
Right.
all those kids are, you're young for 10 years, and then he had 60, he got to 60 more years out of these kids. Crazy. All right, what's your first one, Richard Manfredi?
All right, so I decided to go the sports route for my first one. I figured that was a popular sort of option for
Sports.
For yes, the sports, all of the sports.
The sports.
And this is kind of a 2-for-1 here. I am going with Detroit Lions superstars. Two of them in particular, Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson. Barry Sanders, the running back who retired after the 1998 season when he was in striking distance of Walter Payton's all-time rushing record. The season before he retired, he rushed for 2,000 yards. Just a phenomenal talent, as was Calvin Johnson, the wide receiver. The first wide receiver to come close to 2,000 yards of receiving. When he retired after the 2015 season, he had a great season, 88 catches, 1,200 yards at the peak of his game, and as was Barry Sanders, and they both decided to walk away from the NFL. Why? Because they were on the Detroit Lions, which are perennially the worst team in the NFL. I mean, they are so bad that they are now known in the sports world as sort of a shorthand for a terribly run franchise. So if you're talking about the Baltimore Orioles, you say, yeah, the Orioles have been bad for a long time. They're like the Detroit Lions of baseball. They're sort of just, that's what they're known as.
Yeah.
And both Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson said when they retired, one of the reasons was that they just had enough of being on a team that couldn't win, despite having one of the best players in NFL history, whether it was Barry Sanders or Calvin Johnson on their team. And I'm just fascinated by this idea that just one team can be such a sinkhole that it somehow deprived us of several years of two of the most explosive and wonderful and fun to watch players who ever played their position. It just fascinates me that the team itself just being that bad can really have that much of an impact and sort of just force people, suck the fun out of it.
Wow.
Because I think we forget about the fact that these are, they're athletes, yes, and they get paid very handsomely to perform, but at the same time, they're humans, right? And if they're doing something and they're out there getting their head caved in 16 games every season, and they know they're probably going to lose 11 of them, that's got to be just wearing, it just got to wear on you, just wearying, just not fun after a while. And that's just, sports are supposed to be fun. I'm sure that they went, when Barry Sanders or Calvin Johnson, all through their lives, they were probably on the best teams. Their teams probably won championships all through all levels of their careers. And then they get to the peak of their career playing in the NFL, and they're on the goddamn Lions.
That's interesting for me, finding somebody who's on top within a team that's on the bottom. That's an interesting point. Like, sometimes we're questioning people's motivation, asking why, and you pretty much spelled it out there, that they, no matter what, they were shackled to this losing entity. So no matter how much win they could eke out,
no matter how much individual success they could have, they would never have team success.
Yeah.
And just that level of frustration with that just got to be too much. I mean, with the sports one, and I don't know, Michael, do you have any sports ones on your list?
I do.
Okay, well, maybe I won't talk about it on the off chance that it happens to be one of your picks.
Competitive eating.
Yes, Kobayashi decided to walk away. A terrible tragedy.
Winfield, what's your second one?
My second choice, I'll stay in sports. I'll keep it with sports, and it is Michael Phelps.
Oh
wow.
Who, of all the people that I was thinking of that I remember watching the 2016 Olympics down in Rio de Janeiro, and I wasn't down there, but
I was going to say,
Olympics were, I didn't listen. I didn't go to Rio, you guys. And I remember Michael Phelps from 8 years before as this kid who was on the cover of Sports Illustrated with like these 8 gold medals that he won at the Beijing Olympics. And then he kind of did another amazing feat 4 years later in the London Olympics, and he won a ton of medals then. And you think at some point it's got to break. At some point there's just the guy that it's just too much. It gives in. They end up finishing second or third in these swimming, in these swim competitions, and you just naturally these athletes just kind of fade, and sometimes they fade in a public light, especially after I think in 2012 he kind of retired at some point. He kind of gave it up and made a comeback, but he went on to become just the most decorated Olympic athlete of all time, winning the most number of gold medals, the most number of actual medals. And even in his last Olympics, he took home 5 medals, 4 gold and 1 silver. And there was a very interesting thing you said, Richard, with Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson. They were both like 31 years old, either 30 or 31. And Michael Phelps, too, was like 31 when he won his last 5 medals. And it's what a strange, like, just confluence of like age. Is that when you peak? Is that when you're just at your just over the hill? Does everything go downhill from there? Do these athletes just somehow know, I'm never going to be better than this? I'm perfected my sport. I've perfected everything I can do physically. And now's the time. I don't know. But I think just this guy who's kind of a weird dude, kind of in a niche sport, but it's just like the best that has ever been at this thing is just wild. And I don't think he necessarily gave it up because I don't know, I think they just quit because they know. I think their body tells them sometimes, and maybe with a character like Calvin Johnson and Barry Sanders, it's the combination of like, my physical peak is not going to be there, but also I'm with this terrible organization. But I think with probably someone like Michael Phelps, he's like, how much more decorated can one get? I mean, you can't turn up to 11 every time. And it's just like, I did it. No one's going to beat this for a long, long time. And I just find him pretty fascinating as like kind of a weird kind of guy, or weird personality, kind of awkward. But man, that kid can swim.
Yeah, he seems like physically built uniquely built for that sport.
With his webbed hands, really hands, I think
the gills help.
Yeah,
the gills help.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of those guys. Every once in a while, I'm going to come back to comic books. Every once in a while, some artist decides to kind of go off a very traditional comic book aesthetic for how they draw someone, and they'll draw someone how they would, in theory, should appear in real life. Like at some point, they started drawing the Flash with like really big thighs and like really big legs. I wonder if some of the more aquatic type characters, maybe like a Namor or or Aquaman.
Yeah.
I wonder if they started being drawn more like Michael Phelps.
Yeah.
And if not, they probably should, because this guy's he perfected swimming in a line back and forth.
I would absolutely think that it would be a challenge to have an awareness of your freshness date, your serve by date, best by date, because you have to have an overwhelming amount of confidence in order to compete. And it has to be blinding and single-minded. I think the focus to hit the pool at 5 a.m. every day and train. I just think athletes are mostly noted for that blazing amount of self-confidence, and to to be able to trust whatever that voice is, or maybe it's your entire body telling you, we're done, we can't stay fit for another 4 years till the next one of these. I'm surprised he just never got seduced by one of those professional swimming teams, and gone pro. So
Yeah.
Or a nymph,
a nymph,
a water nymph, yeah,
water nymph,
lured him to his watery grave.
No, well, that's what he was training for. That's why he wore the earplugs, and he wore he'd walk out and he'd have the headphones on, and he was like, I can't hear it listening to DMX right now.
All these beats by Aquaman. Okay, what do you got, Richard, man? Friday.
All right, so my second choice is the one that got me thinking about this topic, and it's the Police, the band, not the law enforcement organizations. And I got thinking just about how huge the album Synchronicity was. I mean, they went from being a very successful band to almost without argument the biggest rock band in the world when that album came out. I mean, it challenged Thriller for the top spot in the Billboard chart for months, which was, if you think about it, it's just, Thriller is the gold standard for successful albums, and Synchronicity was right there. And that was it. We never got another Police album. They went out, they did the tour behind Synchronicity, and they played Shea Stadium, and Sting said that he felt that performing at Shea Stadium was kind of the Everest, and that once you play at Shea Stadium, you've kind of done everything you can with that. He felt like he had done everything he could with the Police. So everyone kind of went their separate ways. They got back together to play some Amnesty International dates in 1986. And they finished their last show was at Giant Stadium. And they're playing Invisible Sun. And Sting brings out Bono to sing the final verse, because U2 is going to be following them up. And when they got done with the song, they handed their instruments individually to all the members of U2. And it was sort of like this passing of the torch, saying, we were the biggest band in the world. We're not going to be around anymore. Now it's your guys' turn.
Oh, I'd never heard that. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story. They actually did get back together in July of 86 to try to record an album, but like Nobody's Heart was in it. Stuart Copeland had fell off a horse and broke his collarbone.
If he had a more athletic horse riding body, that wouldn't have happened.
Yes, exactly. Unfortunately, he had a drummer's body, which is not built, as we all know, is not built for horse riding.
Exactly.
And then, everyone, Sting went off to do another solo album, and everyone just sort of went their separate ways. But the peak of their career, was Synchronicity, which was their last album. Who knows? I mean, how many bands have reached a level like that, have kind of in their hearts known that they're never going to do anything that great or that successful, but continued, even if they hate each other, continued to just plow away doing albums and tours because, well, the money's there. And the Police didn't do that. And I know what you're going to say, but there was a reunion tour. Aha. And I would even say their reunion tour allowed them to go out on top because it was a massive success. It was like at the time, it was the third highest grossing tour of all time. And fans loved it. Critics loved it. Obviously, it was a huge success. And then they just stopped after that. So there was something about the Police where they understood the value of giving the people what they want. But if you're not going to be able to give your best to put something out or to be able to do something, we're not going to do it. And so there was never like this kind of, they never had their Let It Be. Right. They never had that album where they recorded it because they're a band, but nobody wanted to be there and everyone kind of hated each other and it was just kind of like shitty.
Yeah.
They never had that. And I find that fascinating.
If anybody listened to our previous episode, I think I said the title Abbey Road multiple times when I meant Let It Be
Oh, whoops.
in the previous episode. You know, that I find that really fascinating because I have been reading up, like great podcast with Miles Copeland talking about the Copeland brothers, Stuart, his brother, and then I forget the other brother's
Ian
name.
Copeland, right?
Ian.
Yeah.
Ian
The one
was
who runs IRS records, or did, I guess.
I thought Miles ran it. Well, Ian, when when Miles was trying to get the police booked into clubs and things like that, he went to his brother, I guess Ian, who was working as a booker in Atlanta. And,
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and said, "Hey, help me book these guys into some U.S. dates." But I just think, like, without these three brothers, the Copeland brothers, the three brothers who were Andy, Stewart, and Gordon in the police, might not have ever even been in the place to strike so hard when MTV needed three blonde, hunky weirdo goofballs who were combining ska and punk together into this thing nobody had seen before, you know. And
Yeah.
I do think you are absolutely right. I mean, obviously, there were a lot of bands on MTV that never became as popular as the Police did. You know, I think of even Men at Work were kind of the bargain basement Police, and they were so fucking popular, successful.
Yeah, I was reading the number ones series that you and I have talked about.
Yeah,
I've been pushing on you on Stereo Gum, and I can't remember if it was Who Can It Be Now or Land Down Under. It's one of those two entries where it just talked about how huge Business as Usual was.
Yeah,
I mean, it actually knocked Thriller out of the number, or it either kept Thriller out of the number one spot for, like, I want to say, for like a month. Like Thriller was stuck at number 2 because it could not dislodge Business as Usual by fucking Men at Work.
Wow.
From the number one spot. And so, yeah, you're right. I mean, that period of like 1983, there was a lot of weird stuff happening in music. And the Police were like this. I mean, it shouldn't have worked in terms of mainstream success to that level. Yeah, I mean, there were these kind of, like you said, good looking kind of goofy guys, and they had a personality. But their music was this kind of mix, like you said, of reggae and new wave and punk. I mean, really, there's no reason why they should have succeeded where a band like, I don't know, XTC, who came up at the same time, shouldn't have. But somehow the Police got through connections and whatever reasons, they got the golden ticket. And they decided to walk away from it. And that's fascinating to me.
Yeah, I agree too. I also interesting, you know, what else were they going to do? You know, well, Stuart Copeland was going to do music scores, and Sting was going to fight Kyle MacLachlan in Dune. You know, they all had their own other things that they were excited about doing. So
what was Sting most excited about doing? Doing it for hours on end.
Yes, tantric boning,
baby.
Okay, first of all, I saw the
First
Synchronicity. I saw the Synchronicity tour at Kemper Arena. So far away, I'm not sure. It could have been Larry, Darrell, and Darrell. I don't know if it was Sting, but I remember by the time Synchronicity came out, mostly through my brother, who was a drummer, and he just loved Stuart Copeland, and he loves Regatta de Blancs and Yada Mandata, Atlandos de Amor, or whatever the other 3 albums were.
Yeah.
Synchronicity was the big fucking sellout. It was like Clash Combat Rock. It was like their radio album oriented rock sellout. And so even though, Every Breath You Take was like the biggest, I think that was on that album. That was like the biggest fucking MTV seller there ever was. We were just permanently eye rolling at these guys who were like so cool. And now everybody in the world knew about them. So
sellouts. Yeah, they're selling out arenas every night.
Yeah. So guys, we sold out. we have made all of our catalog free to you. It used to be behind a paywall, and you would need to
We knock that paywall
knocked
down.
that
It was a
paywall down.
literal wall made out of Legos.
Yeah.
You had to get through it.
You had to get through it, and no longer it's all free out there for you to just grab. So there may be, you don't do this, but some disreputable people have already kind of downloaded them, burned them onto CDs, and have been selling them on street corners out in Hollywood Boulevard. But that's your choice. We're like you two. We're putting it out on free on your iPhone.
Whether you want it or not.
Whether you want it or not, you can delete it immediately. But do us a solid. If you're going to monetize it or do all that stuff that we know you're going to do us a solid of giving it a 5-star rating. If it's a 100-star scale, still give it 5 stars because that's what we deserve. And then do us another solid and let us know what episodes you'd like us to tackle, topics you'd like us to discuss. You can do that on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Maybe people who went out on bottom.
Went out when things hit the worst, and then he just
things hit the worst. I went out before everything's ever got any good.
That's the podcast. It's like the podcast, basically.
It's whatever that football guy is in the draft every year that gets selected.
Mr. Irrelevant.
Mr. Irrelevant. That's the last picked. That there's a guy that's even less irrelevant than him. It's the person that was picked right before him. At least Mr. Irrelevant has like a catchy nickname that he can forever have on his Wikipedia page. Whoever picked number 378 is like, nobody knows me. They'll never know me.
There was a 30 for 30, or it was like a 10 for 10 or something on the guy who Jordan's dunking on in the poster. I forget what poster it is, but the kind of pale white guy who's kind of falling over, and it's all him talking about my life is great. I don't know why people think I'm so sorry and pathetic just because I'm the guy Jordan's dunking on in the poster. Has anybody said George Washington?
No.
He's on the Mount Rushmore. Here's the dude who invented, was it Comatus? Comatus was like the Greek, or the Roman emperor who was made emperor, and then they needed him to be emperor, and he said, okay, I'll do it for a year. And then after he helped him out, he quit. And so George Washington was following in his footsteps. So like, here's the guy who's literally, win the Revolutionary War. Okay, I'm not going to be in the army anymore. Or are you going to be a president? Okay, yeah, but I'm only going to do it for a couple of years, and then I'm going to be done. Like, wow, what a definition of.
Yeah, he definitely was the there's a lot of like idealization of America's greatness in our past, even though it has not been so great, and it's been openly racist and horrible, and even in the times of the initial quote unquote greatness of America, throwing off the shackles of English rule and all that. It's kind of a terrible country, but he did set the tone of being like, you know what, I'm gonna stop now, and it's better that I stop now. And thankfully some other people thought to themselves, you know what, that nobody should do this forever. Good on you, GW.
Just get corrupt. Okay, Mr. Winfield, what is your third choice?
Okay, my third choice. So let me set the scene. Imagine that you are in a world practically worshipped as a god. But you're kind of a loner, and then you meet the girl of your dreams, right? You fall in love with this person, and you're whisked away, and suddenly you found like fame and fortune, and the girl is there, and then you're on the top of the Empire State Building, and planes are buzzing around. It is the tallest building that you've ever seen. It's the highest. You love to climb. By the way, you love to climb. I'm not talking like Sylvester Stallone in Cliffhanger climb. You love climbing.
This is Ernest Borgnine.
Of course, I'm talking about King Kong.
King Kong.
Yeah, he had it all. He had fame and fortune on the Broadway stage.
Yeah.
He met the girl of his dreams that he was madly in love with. He would do anything for her. He'd fight Tyrannosaurus Rexes for her. He'd fight pterodactyls for her. He was literally worshipped as a god by the people on Skull Island. They sacrificed things to him all the time. Went on a fabulous sea voyage, not unlike Joe and Joe versus the Volcano. Quality film. He comes to New York. Everybody wants to go to New York. They have this new building. And he sees this building and he's like, oh my God, this building is a size even bigger than my mountain back home. I'm going to climb to the top. Bada bing, bada boom. You're falling off. I had a pretty good life. King Kong.
Is it his high voice, do you think, that she's attracted to Fay Ray?
I wonder if he was like one of those kind of like great apes that he got to New York and then he tried to put on like a New York, accent.
Oh yeah, hey, wait, I want to get a slice.
I'm climbing over here.
Where's the F train? Wow. Okay, that's it's a very true. Like literally from the highest heights, he
hath done fall. And that was the end.
I don't think how much agency did he have on his demise. I don't think he did. Some biplanes had their part in it, right? Are we talking about somebody's self?
And Jeff Bridges too.
Jeff Bridges.
Oh wait, that's the wrong movie. Okay, you're thinking of the earlier one. My bad.
That was the wrong movie and the wrong tower that he fell off of. He was on top of the World Trade
Center. Yeah,
the World Trade Center on that one. But I think I've been watching the most recent kind of King Kong, Godzilla movies recently. And, the word apex predator is thrown around so much of these, these gigantic titans that are bashing into each other. And they're the greatest creatures that have ever roamed the earth. And God, that must just make you feel pretty good to get out of bed every morning and just be like, yep, biggest, the best there is. Yeah. And he was the biggest and the best on like his island. It kind of sucked. You'd have to fight for your life every day, but you were ultimately the best person.
Yeah. If you saw a lion running around, you could pick it up, bite its head off, and just throw the rest, or eat the rest if you wanted to. Like the king of the jungle, you could just eat his head, eat his whole body.
King Kong. Hey, he's royalty.
Yep.
He's not Prince Kong.
No. So yeah, there's a little bit of silliness in terms of him literally getting to the top and falling off, but just in terms of like he found love to whatever he had, and then
he didn't get old. He didn't cut a rap album. He didn't have like a late night infomercial or an ill-fated sponsorship or something like that. He's
no comb over.
No comb over. He's not promoting Magic Jack at 1 a.m. or something.
There's no King Kong air fryer that he's just trying to.
You got out, Manfredi.
All right. So my third choice is J.D. Salinger.
Oh, okay.
The famous recluse author came to prominence in the late 1940s with his stories about the Glass family, including A Perfect Day for Banana Fish, and kind of these stories telling about the Glasses, which included Franny and Zoe. And then by 1951 had put out Catcher in the Rye, which becomes a complete sensation. And he was arguably the most famous author of the in the time of the 1950s. And in 1961, he is on the cover of Time magazine. I mean, that's kind of how big he is. But even by 61, he's starting to, they sort of profile him as this life of a recluse, because he's getting insular and he's drawing in and he's not doing interviews and he's moving to this small town in New England and kind of just building these walls around himself. And in 1965, this novella comes out, Hapworth 16, 1924, which was a took on the form of a letter from Seymour Glass to his parents from summer camp. And it was published and took up most of the June 19th, 1965 issue of the New Yorker. And that was it. He was out. He was ghost. He was done. Now, the fascinating thing about J.D. Salinger, I think, is that he never stopped writing. He just stopped publishing. He just basically decided he was going to write for himself. And he had stuff that he just wrote and kept. And that was it. And I think that as someone who wanted to be a writer at one point in my life, like an actual writer, not a guy who writes social media copy, I understand that sort of. I can understand how J.D. Salinger could get there. If you're someone who's uncomfortable with fame, but you love writing, how do you reconcile that? Well, maybe you just stop publishing the stuff and just start writing for your own, to get this out of your system, and you never have to get reviews on whether it's terrible or horrible or great or whatever it happens to be, and you can keep just working on the same stories for the rest of your life. One neighbor said that Salinger told him he had written, by the 70s, 15 unpublished novels.
Jeez. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
and that's something that his kids have said. They started a couple of years ago. They came out and said, we're going to try and figure out a way to get some of these works out after his death, and that at some point that everything that he wrote would be shared with the public. That was in 2019. It hasn't come out yet.
Just tweeted out 280 characters at a time.
That's the new, used to publish in Collier's and Harper's. No, now it's just Twitter.
Yeah.
You guys read the new Pitcher in the Wheat? It's the new Salinger. Seems
Yeah.
So
derivative.
dumb.
That's such a bad joke, Jeff.
You know, his son played Captain America. Matt
What?
Salinger is an actor. His son played Captain America in 1991, I think, or 1980 in the 80s. No, in
really?
1990. Yeah.
It wasn't the not the Roger Corman. Yeah, didn't Roger
Not
Corman
the
make-
Rebel. Maybe it
Hold
was.
on. He was in Revenge of the Nerds too.
Yeah.
Not Revenge of the Nerds 2. He was in Revenge of the
Also.
Nerds as well.
He was also
Yeah,
in Revenge
in
of the
addition,
Nerds.
yeah.
Fascinating. I didn't know that part of it.
Yeah.
Danny Burke. He was one of the horrible
Jocks.
Alpha Beta.
That's fascinating, because this isn't Finding Forrester or something kind of about loosely based about that or something.
Yeah, it's
kind of
about a reclusive author who decides to mentor a young prodigy.
Mm-hmm. I think as part of a capitalist society and a society that treats celebrities, whether they're literary or entertainment or music, as greater than regular humans, it's fascinating for us, I think, when an artist has a relationship solely with their art form, that they're willing to exclude us from it. And a good reader of literature has this audience of all the great masters, and it seems like Salinger was just trying to impress them. He was just trying to impress Shakespeare or Faulkner or somebody like, really? Hemingway. Oh, you don't want to impress us anymore and let us devour you and chew you up and spit you out with newspaper articles and things like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, there was just something about having his art productized and commercialized. I mean, in Hollywood, they made one movie based on one of his short stories, and he hated it. And basically, said, even though he loved movies apparently and had tons of like 8mm and 16mm reels of all these collection of these great movies, he never wanted his movies ever again, or he never wanted his stories ever again to be turned into a movie.
Can you imagine what was the last movie that J.D. Salinger watched?
I hope it was something dumb. I hope it was something like,
I hope so too. It was like Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed or something. Just like he's happened to have seen it with a grandchild and then had passed away. Just something it's like Surf's Up, the one with the surfing penguins, which is actually pretty good. But
Right.
I'll never be that good. Uh, Michael, what's your final choice?
My final choice is Westley, the Dread Pirate Roberts from
fun.
Oh, fun.
The Princess Bride. This man has accomplished everything that he set his heart out to do. He went out and made his fortune. He came back and found his lady love. He helped another find revenge. And then he gave it all up. He made his money. He has the woman that he wanted. He doesn't need to do anything else. He was nearly killed in the process, had 50 years of his life possibly, removed from him. Maybe a portion of it was put back by the Miracle Max, but I think that's left up to speculation. But he's a person that could have continued his life as a pirate if he had so wished, but he had a very specific goal. And I think so many of the choices that we've talked about are about that, are about achieving a goal of finding something that you know what your end point is. You set up the goal. I've done this thing, and now I can rest. Now I can go back to a life of happiness, a life of finding something else to be fulfilled by. And I think that he is such a, you kind of alluded to it. You talked about it, Richard, or Jeff, with the George Washington. When you talked about George Washington, the idea that you can give up power, I think, is really interesting. Power and influences, as his career as the Dread Pirate Roberts is one that he didn't necessarily want to pursue. He was hijacked and was a part of his crew, and then became it once he kind of showed his mettle, being, to the previous Dread Pirate Roberts. And the ability to pass this thing along is a sign of character, and as was his pursuit of Buttercup. It was just like, this is his end game. His end game is, his end game is coming back to the woman that he loves and showing her that he can provide for her, and also kill a few RUSs along the way.
I do think, the idea there's a lot of Roman like influence, I think, on the shape of our democracy, but even the idea of what a citizen was probably very alluring to George Washington. The idea that a citizen of a great city or state or country is a good thing to be, a private citizen. And of course he had like an estate and all this stuff and wealth that he had to maintain. But I imagine Westley thought that was pretty fucking cool too, to just settle down and raise a family and probably lord over a manor or something like that, whether it be humble or not. But I think most people look at that and go, oh, you're nobody. It's like Henry Hill in Goodfellas. Those regular guys, they were dead. If you're not a celebrity or a gangster or something.
I just love the idea of like seeing this entire person's life struggle of coming up as a poor stable boy, yet completely handsome and beautiful at the same time. So like, don't cry for me too much. Mr. Carey Elway's just this unbelievably gorgeous, blue-eyed, blonde-haired man, and just oh no, I'm poor but incredibly handsome, and I found my love at 18, and and then coming back to, at the end of the day, fulfilling everything that he sought out to do, and then falling out a window, gives it all up, and is like, well, why don't you do this thing that has all this great power and tremendous fortune in front of you, and I'm gonna go actually rest for the first time in my life.
Yeah. Well, it feels like old Steve Rogers handing a shield over to Sam Wilson or something like that.
I do owe this pick to walking by my fridge and seeing a magnet of Inigo Montoya on there. It says you killed my father, prepare to die, and it's just like it fell right into my head. So thank you to Emily's stepmother
Nice,
for
nice.
having sent us that so many years ago.
I almost feel like Carrie Elwes did that with the movie. I'm sure he's done some fun things since. I think the Saw. I've never seen the Saw movies, but I think he was in those, and I don't know. But that was kind of his.
He was in Stranger Things recently.
Was he? Yeah.
Yeah.
Emily and I just got through watching 3 Rambo movies that I'd never seen. She'd never seen them either. I'd never seen. I made it 40 something years. I've never seen Rambo or First Blood Part 2 or Rambo 3. Have no real intention of seeing the other 2, but we watched them all together. And my immediate thought was, oh my God, I want to watch Hot Shots.
Yeah.
Of course, it's like, I got to see a Zucker brother movie, and Carrie Elwes is in that, so it's like, I can't wait to see that. Yeah, he's like he plays the kind of Val Kilmer type handsome blonde guy in that one too.
Yeah. Favorite scene, Martin Sheen intercutting between Martin Sheen on his
Charlie Sheen
in
Part 2. Yeah.
I loved you in Wall Street. They each see each other. Manfredi, wrap it up.
All right, so my rippity wrap. My last choice is the TV show The Sopranos.
Oh, nice.
A show that lasted for 6 seasons, and I believe 80, as he stalls, as he's trying to look this up on Wikipedia, 86 episodes. And it was when it went off the air, it was at a critical peak, at a cultural peak, certainly near the top of its ratings peak. This is a show that could have gone on as long as David Chase wanted it to go on. But he just decided, I know what story I want to tell, and I can get there with 6 seasons, and just set up the 6th season as sort of a prolonged farewell to wrap up a lot of the stuff. And we all know about the ending and whether or not that works or doesn't work. That's totally your one person's opinion versus another's. But 6 seasons, that's nothing. That's a very British television way to do things.
Yeah.
Hell, that's 3 seasons max.
Yeah,
the British are like 3 seasons of 18 episodes. You're pushing it.
Unless it's something like Are You Being Served, which I think went on for 88 years or something like that.
Yeah,
but,
Coronation Street is 50 years or something.
Yeah, so there's either one or the other. But yeah, The Sopranos just is something that reached this cultural zeitgeist, and David Chase said, you know what, we're done. I've told the story, and it's time to wrap it up and go home. Now there is a sequel coming out, or a prequel, involving the young Tony Soprano, which I don't know. I'm up in the air about that one. David Chase wrote it, so I'm kind of hopeful that it's good, but I don't know. But that shouldn't take away from the idea that David Chase kind of was able to walk away from this hugely successful show just because he had told the story he wanted to tell. And he kind of showed in the last season that there's no way out of this lifestyle. You either wind up dead or in jail. Those are your options.
Yeah.
Or you wind up like Uncle Junior, senile and shooting your nephew accidentally. But yeah, basically showed there was no happy endings for any of these people. And that was the story he wanted to tell from the beginning. And he was able to get there in 6 seasons. And so that was enough. There was no stringing it out. There's never never a cousin Oliver.
Yeah.
In The Sopranos.
I feel like, is it Tony Jr.? I feel like the son character.
Toju. Yeah, they call him Toju.
Toju. I just felt like I never even felt like he was really.
You mean AJ? It was AJ.
AJ?
No, you're not a true fan. Everyone called him Toju. You don't remember this episode after episode? Hey, Toju this, Toju that. Okay. I don't know. I'm just making it up.
I just remember thinking,
roll with it. Yes, and
if he was a more compelling performer, they would have had to go on with the next generation of the thing. And I realized his storyline was about how he was never going to be his dad, and then nobody should be his dad. That's The Godfather anyhow. That's not this story.
Yeah.
But yeah, and hats off to him. I think also they had already reinvented the idea of pay television as the home for good content. Like I forget what series had done that kind of before. Was Twin Peaks on pay?
No, that was ABC.
ABC. Okay.
But he was like your
Arliss.
oh God, no. Sex in the City or Larry Sanders Show.
Yeah.
Kind of like that.
But, I think of how many people were driven to sign up for HBO just because of Sopranos.
Well, it's amazing. It's interesting to see that kind of, contrasted with Game of Thrones, which was, even more successful. And like, it's weird to see, everyone has criticized that final season on how it was wrapped up. And I still don't understand why it was wrapped up so quickly. They had all the money in the world. They had all, like, the people that were just the showrunners were just like, oh, we want to move on to something else. And that, like, that's not great storytelling. That's not very, like, it could have been written a little bit longer. It feels like it could have been developed. It could have been, obviously they were working off of like the kind of sketchbook ideas of George R.R. Martin on how he was going to finish the books, and the books that he's never gonna write. He cares too much about like doing prequel type stuff, the detailed history of the stuff that happened, 5,000 years before, whatever. They're even doing the prequel shows of that seem like I don't really care about it. Like,
he's right. He's like Tolkien if he wrote this, if he had like basically decided to tell all the backstories before he finished Return of the King.
Yeah, it's very
like that. It's weird.
It's very strange, but I mean, even just the idea of like, they could have done whatever they wanted. They could have kept this going, but then they decided to move on to other now kind of failed projects. It seems so it's so strange, and I guess so unsatisfying in the way that's the exact opposite of how The Sopranos was satisfying. Whether you like that last episode or not, the entire series was so great. Everything was so great about it, so well thought out and so well developed, except for maybe some kind of dream sequences type stuff. But even that, it's all forgivable.
I also have to admit that the first season of Sopranos, I thought, oh, they're ripping off Analyze This, a mobster talking to a therapist.
Yeah.
And it had some elements of humor in it. And boy, after 6 or so episodes, there was no thinking about that anymore. It was all off its own universe for sure. All right, dudes, we did it. But we're going to continue to do it. We're not going
out on top. We'll go out aggressively in the middle.
Let's go, just because it was so unpredictably batty. King Kong.
Oh,
that's and how about the nostalgia that it kind of caught me with The Police, and then I'd heard of Barry Sanders but not Calvin Johnson, so let's go with those two. And I don't know, I kind of think you both agree on this, so I'm going to go with this. It's going to be a Richard Heavy awards thing, so Sopranos.
Good. Yeah, good choice. Good.
Okay, guys.
Should I retire now that I actually finally won a week?
Oh, snap.
Don't answer. Don't answer.
That's all we had to do, give you 3.
Yeah, don't answer, guys. Please.
No, this ain't nothing without Richard Manfredi. And this has been the Mount Rushmore of Going Out on Top. I'm always Jeff.
I'm Richard.
I'm Michael.
I'm always Jeff, to my wife's chagrin. Oh, you're still you?
Still Jeff.
Still Jeff.